Welcome back to Lunatic Astrology. Today we're having a very special show. We're talking about Mars moving into the heart of the sun, something we haven't seen since 1991 and 1959 before that. And Mars is moving into the heart of the sun in the sign of Scorpio, which is why it is so rare. And we'll see it again in 1938. It's a big, big deal. It's going to reset your life. Starting November 17th or 18th, depending on your time zone, add 2 whole years. And that Scorpio piece of real estate in your natal sky is going to indicate a place of big, big change. Okay. We're going to talk about every little detail of that for you as well with my special guest today, Racheal of Aoelian Heart Astrology. We're going to bring her in to collaborate with me on this particular topic. She's very versed in the arcane knowledge of magic and astrology. And for some of you, you may want to look at this event, the Cazimi, as a very important date in which you could maybe harness the sky. But it is a 2-year story. We'll talk a bit about the world events, but mostly this is an astrology video that helps you navigate and time your best life using the ancient tool and the wisdom of astrology. So let's get Racheal into our room of Aeolian Heart Astrology. The links to all of her content will be in my description box below. Hi, Racheal. Welcome so much to my channel to talk today about that Mars in the heart of the sun, that rare event that happened last in 1991. And I'm so grateful you're here. And I wonder if you tell us all a little bit about the kind of astrology you practice and how you got into astrology before we deep dive into the sky.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Lori. I'm very happy to be back and excited to be talking with you today about Mars Cazimi. But my background with astrology, I'll try to make it brief. Essentially, when I was growing up, my mom was extremely religious. She was born again Christian, and my father was a lapsed Catholic who'd become an atheist. And so I had this very divided home in terms of what my parents expected of me. And my father had kind of like an interest in astrology back from his, from the 70s, like everybody did. And so I was, being a Saturn in Scorpio in the 12th house, Pluto in Scorpio in the 12th house, I really could not help that I was very attracted to the mysteries, to what's esoteric. And so there was a few astrology books in our house that my mom did not approve of. And so there was this joy of, tasting forbidden fruit, doing something that was rebellious by looking into astrology. And so I had like a normal teenage interest in astrology throughout high school. I would not say that I became masterful at it. I read the really basic books that were available at the time about the 12 signs. And like what I would do at that time is talk to my friends about who they had a crush on and what those signs meant and la, la, la. I did that kind of thing. So, but then when I started college, like 18, I was really digging the identity of becoming academic. And I really wanted to cultivate my intellect. And I had a professor in the science department that totally shot down astrology with the argument about the precession of the equinoxes. And I was so struck with pain and shame. And I just thought, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe that I've believed in this superstitious nonsense. So I literally just shoved it in a drawer and like moved past it and became a dogmatic materialist, which did not last very long. It's like just a phase I went through.
And just for our listening audience, I'd like to say, to explain what you just said, what she's talking about, everybody, is that the real-time sky, as we see it in our sky view apps, or when we look up in the heavens and see where those constellations are not where Western tropical zodiac astrology says they are. So when we say, Jupiter is moving through Taurus right now, well, no, in the real-time sky, he's not. He's moving through the sign 23 or 4 degrees earlier into the sign of Aries from his Taurus place. And so what we're actually talking about is the existential conundrum between sidereal or Vedic or real-time sky and a sky that's symbolic, pinned to the seasons, which we call Western tropical zodiac. So just explain why you had a loss of faith.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I went through that phase and I really tried. I tried really, really hard to be a dogmatic materialist, though it did not suit my temperament or my personality at all. And so by the time I was, I'm studying anthropology, cultural anthropology, and I have learned to have an open mind about as many possibilities in terms of culture and tradition and religious expressions. So I start reading Mircea Eliade, I start reading a lot of Jung, I start reading, obviously the classics, The Golden Bough and Margaret Mead, and I'm so steeped in other people's exciting mythology and tradition, but I myself am in this, I've painted myself into this corner where I don't get to actually taste or do anything. I just sit there and look at everything from the outside, which is, the role of the anthropologist. But I didn't really like that. I wanted to get more like juicy, more into things. And so it was a combination of things, but I had an amazing teacher. My professor, her name is Dr. Sabina Magliocco. She is a folklorist, and she's from Italy, but she had lived in this country with dual citizenship for many years. So she has an amazing perspective. And she herself was a practicing witch. And I was like, what? Like, because she didn't seem flaky or super dreamy or ungrounded. All of the assumptions that I had about people who claimed to be witches, I just were blown out of the water by Sabina Magliocco. And so she was this great mentor to me. And I grew to respect the fact that she was both academic and also she practiced some of the folklore that she was so passionate about. And I made this connection when I was in her class. We were studying myth, which is like, that's where I am happiest. And we were asked to choose a myth and do a deep dive. And so the myth that I chose was the myth of Persephone. And it had always been one of my favorite myths. And I realized while I was doing my deep dive study on it that I'm not going to get any really interesting perspective on Persephone unless I'm willing to read some of the deeper esoteric readings. And so I got into that, into the rites of Eleusis, into the fact that it is an equinox myth that describes the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, the necessity of that cycle. Right. And I realized, here I am, I was born on September 18th. So I'm a late Decan, third Decan Virgo. And it just suddenly dawned on me that the reason I love this myth, the reason why I feel it so deeply in my bones, is because there I was born right at the equinox. So I decided, you know what? I'm a Virgo. I already knew this, I'm a Virgo. Virgo the Virgin, Persephone, the Maiden, wheat, and all of these things associated with that time of year, the beauty of summer, but the melancholy of the fact that it's about to start fading, that it's about to yield to the fall, that the sun is about to fall. And I realized I've lived my whole life feeling exactly that. Always a melancholic person, always very aware of the ephemerality of things, the loss that's at the edge of even the most beautiful moments. And so I had that reawakening of my passion for astrology. And so I felt like totally invited to just dig right back in and get involved with practicing it, studying it. And by practicing, I mean with my friends. And so when I was in grad school, finally, I decided that I would relieve some of the pressure that I was under in grad school and actually take an astrology class. And it was so nice because it gave me this balance. I was able to exercise other parts of myself through this astrology class. And it was actually Nightlight Astrology, Adam Ellenboss. So
my God, did we not talk? I don't remember that. That was my Hellenistic teacher in 2018. Did we talk about that?
No. Oh,
that's cool. So you must have studied with him way back. When did you learn from him?
This was 2013.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, I loved his stuff. He used to write great articles on Reality Sandwich, and
I remember that he was on Reality Sandwich. Yes.
He was just a really original writer. So yeah, that's how.
You said something though. What was it? You made me think of something when we talked about, oh my God, Oh, my brain. So the Adam Ellen bus thing took the question away. But I'll say two things about, it'll come back to me, about what you just expressed. You know, I know what it is. So what I find that the value add when I look at astrology for my people who want to see me personally or my people on YouTube is I think underneath it, people, you think, oh, they're just desperate to know the future. They're afraid of the future. But I don't think so. What I'm seeing underneath the yearning for astrological or tarot or alchemical knowledge and wisdom or all of that is that old Robert Moore quote: "The soul has an absolute unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. It needs it like the mind needs thoughts and the body needs food." And I may have mangled the last two in the order of it, but you know, the materialistic, pragmatic, you know, God is dead, you know, orientation towards reality is leaving people empty, and and people have already fallen away from religion. And I don't think astrology is a religion. I think why I like astrology is it's the enchantment. So let's just say one more thing before we do Mars for you and us, and stay tuned, everyone. We're going to promise we're going to talk about Mars. Is that when you say you love the Persephone myth and you tied it to the essence of being, you know, on the cusp of the equinox and the fall and the sun is going into the dark time and blah, blah, blah. That's true. But I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go dig up the asteroid Persephone in your natal chart. Use the 24,000 named asteroids at astro.com. Like everyone I know who's taken my amazing asteroids free giveaway course loves it, because all of a sudden also you go, oh, no wonder, because she'll be somewhere prominent. She'll be on an intimate angle, or she'll be with, you know, another planet that really matters. And I find that that's the enchantment for me. How can I say, oh my God, it is so cool that my best friend is a sommelier and she's born with Bacchus on her midheaven for her high noon career point? How can it be that my client channels Jesus and the asteroid for Jesus is on his midheaven? And then it becomes this sort of enchantment with reality as we begin to understand the intricate, interlocking magic of being alive. It's crazy.
Yeah. 100%. And in fact, because of your suggestion to do that, not Persephone, I haven't thought of that because there's so many asteroids. It's crazy. But after talking to you last time, I started playing with that and I found some insane things. I could not believe it. Like, yes. I could not believe it. Not only like my husband's surname is Burke, and he's a Capricorn. And I found that his name, Burke, is right on top of my natal Jupiter in Capricorn. And I was like, and it's in the second house. So it's just like this person came into my life that is a Capricorn, that is right on top of a planet that is expansive and associated with my good fortune, as well as my need for stability and grounding and self-esteem, and also somebody who could help me to expand and nurture my own talents and my own gifts. And I was just like, this is incredible.
Yes, because he's your business partner as well as your husband. And that's that second earnings house, voice vocation Jupiter with his name on it. You can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up. And of course, that was never the intention. You know, we met when we were kids. So I was not like, you are going to be my business partner. It just happened.
I love that stuff. So me too. My ex-husband's names are all over my chart, and father of my kids' names, all that kind of stuff, even before I even thought to look for asteroids. So anybody who's listening now, before we talk about Mars and all of that, number one, go check out the amazing free asteroids course. It's underneath every video for the last like 8 months. You can all check out your asteroids. And also, so is all of Racheal's great content. You know, we'll put links to her podcast and to her website, and she's going to be teaching a wonderful course. It's called Metamorphosis, and you're able to tap the replay for free. It's 3 days of content, 3 days she's teaching, but she's giving all of my followers on YouTube, it's so gracious of you, the access to that replay. So the free link will be down below. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's really great. Sweet. So let's talk Mars. Let's talk about Mars, because Mars is action, Mars is passion, Mars is drive, Mars is war. Mars is conflict. And here we are, Mars coming into the heart of the sun in Scorpio on November 17th, 18th, depending on where you live, at 24 degrees, I think, 24 degrees, an odd change of, I'll pick the picture up in a minute, of the sign of Scorpio. And to me, this is like, okay, you know, like 1991, November, this happened, 1959, October 30th, 1944 in November, different degrees of Scorpio. Like in 1991, it was at 15, in 1959, this was at 5 degrees. But one of the things about the Babylonian astrology, which I've studied some of with a Babylonian astrology teacher over the years, is that the actual death of a planet in the sun initiates a synodic cycle of 2 years of action. In this case, the action in the Scorpio part of reality for you, for me, for the world. And there's something very intriguing about Scorpio being activated now in a time of great intensity, a time of great secrets being revealed, truth being dug up. That's all Scorpionic. But also Mars in his home kingdom is quite capable of creating conflict. So tell me some of your thoughts just about the theme of this type of Cazimi. And as a magician, as an alchemist, and as a witch, how would you even get near this with a 10-foot pole using magic?
Okay. Good question. A lot. Well, let me begin by I need to acknowledge that Mars is the planet that is most difficult and most frightening throughout history. Even in like the traditional Renaissance magic of Marsilio Ficino, he extols the virtues and finds the beauty in all of the other planets. But when it comes to Mars, you could feel him cringe. Like there is fear and trepidation about Mars, even from Ficino's perspective. And he's like, a great philosopher and also a soul healer. He was somebody who was using knowledge of astrology as medicine. But Mars is really dangerous and frightening. And the reason why is because Mars does represent the part of ourselves that is prone to violence and wrath and rage. And of course, we know that Mars is the god of war. But we have to look a little deeper into the symbolism to start understanding why Mars is so essential and so important and is absolutely necessary to integrate and balance into the psyche so that we can be healthy and whole. So Mars, first of all, being the source of conflict within the psyche. You can see the Mars symbol is actually it's a spear or a blade, however you want to look at it, or even an arrow. Either way, it's a weapon that pierces and cuts and separates. And that act of separation within the psyche creates conflict, certainly, inner conflict. And we all understand what it's like to fight with ourselves. And I believe that Ficino actually said that Mars is when we attack ourselves. So he's very conscious of the fact that all conflict that we see outside of us from that hermetic perspective begins with inner conflict. There is no war or any violence in the world that doesn't have its source in your own inner conflict, your own rage against yourself, your own division that has not been integrated or healed. And so why I like to focus on alchemy specifically is because alchemy is a process that goes through every planet and that acknowledges every step in the process of transformation. And so Mars has a very important function in alchemy, which is that process of separation.
Wow.
But when you get stuck in separation, it ravages you and the world.
Okay.
So inner conflict is where all conflict begins. We understand that. And then when we look at the fact that Mars is in Scorpio, such a powerful placement of Mars, the stakes are very high because those malefic energies are increased, meaning that we do confront a tremendous amount of our own darkness, our own rage, our own repressed taste for violence, our own hatred. But the process of separation is actually about ultimately purifying that division, purifying that conflict within us, bringing up the darkness, bringing up the rage, kind of boiling things up or even burning things out, such as the experience of a fever, which is a terrible experience to go through. But the fever itself is actually your body trying to burn out the poisons that have taken hold. And without the fever, how would you be purified of whatever it is that's attacking your physical well-being? Now, a fever is also dangerous because if it gets out of control, it can kill you. And that is why Mars is so problematic and so frightening. But
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I love this content. I have a question and I have a story. So I'll do the story, then I'll do the question. I have a story, a thought, and a question. So a story is what you said in the beginning is so true about using a lot of people do a magic, like under the light of, a certain condition in the sky, Venus exalted in Pisces, I will make this candle or this incense or this talismanic object to embed that sky positivity into an object. And also people use more dangerous planets like Mars for also magic. So I want to tell you a funny story about even when you think you're doing okay and you've got all of your hazmat suit on around Mars and you're not going to get burned by Mars. There's a great little story about me buying a talismanic Mars and Scorpio object from Sphere and Sundry, Austin Kopic's wife, about 3 years ago. It was delivered to my Montreal home, but I was traveling and my daughter took possession of it and opened it. Now, what it was some incense, maybe free incense, a powder incense, and another object with a Mars Scorpio magical concoction done under the light of a Scorpio Mars sky. Because Scorpio is heat and Scorpio is poison. And she had imbued it with a small amount of Scorpio poison. Now, I think it was actually some kind of remnant of Scorpio tail poison. But the point is, my daughter opened it up. The powder flew into her face, into her eyes. And she's like, ah! And she's like, Mom, what's with this? What was in this package? And, and like she's putting drops. She was fine. It was almost like getting burned by that stuff you put mace for the eyeballs, sprayed in the eye, or tear gas. And I laughed. She was okay. But I laughed because I'm thinking, you can't make this stuff up. It is Mars magic, and it even backfired, even though it's under this energy of trying to use it carefully, handle with care by Austin Kopic's wife, by Sphere and Sundry. It even had a backlash. Needless to say, I used none of it. Okay, number 2, that's the story. Mars cuts, ends, and severs, beautifully said, or, separates, ends, and cuts, and severs. And we go, oh no, separation, ending, cutting, severing. But how do you get on this earth? Your umbilical cord, it has to be cut between you and that mother. And so we need cutting energy in reality. So that was a story, a thought, and a question's coming. It was the last thing you said, alchemy. So in the 7 stages of traditional alchemy, which is a process of refinement to, come to a place of the realization of truth and self, the Philosopher's Stone, a la Emerald Tablet, which I don't know enough about. So I'm basically cobbling together a cursory knowledge. Is there a stage called separation? Is it one of the 7 stages?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, which stage is it?
Let me explain. So in the most basic formula for alchemy, there are 7 stages, each correlated to one of the 7 classical planets, as well as one of the 7 chakras. And of course, that number 7 is just one of those. It's one of those divine numbers that vibrates throughout so many things that we find in creation. But the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 chakras, the 7 planets. And so it begins in what is called, there are 3 stages in the alchemical process. It begins with the black phase. And the black phase is where you allow things to die. You burn things away. You clear the space. You clear away the dead matter. You clear away the density, and you release the spirit in the alchemical perspective, or the light, if you want to look at it that way. You release the light that's been trapped in the darkness of death, repression, fear, insecurity. And so it begins with that black phase, and you go through Saturn. That's actually where you perform the operation of calcination, which is burning the matter down to ash. Now, that was literally done in the laboratory. They would actually burn matter down to ash. But on the psychic level and the spiritual level, it's a metaphor for actually facing the fear that you have been hiding from. And so those images that we know about the burning pits of hell, being surrounded by flames and demons and all of the torments, those images actually come from alchemical manuscripts. And what they are describing is the beginning of alchemy, where you finally you stop running, you stop repressing, you stop swallowing and repressing and running and hiding, and you just face what it is that you're hiding from. And that feels like going to hell. But in fact, those fires are transformative. They are liberating. And so you burn everything down to ash, and then you bring it to the next level of the process, which is called dissolution. Now, dissolution is associated with Jupiter and the sacral chakra.
Mm.
And that is actually liberating the waters of imagination. In a woman's body, that's where our womb is, the space of creation, a tremendous mystery. The vast oceans of imagination can actually enter into that realm, but not until you are unblocked. And so that dissolution frees the energy that was burned away. But there are still very frightening things in that realm because you're in the black phase of alchemy. And so those waters of imagination are very much like the collective unconscious that Jung described. And so there are monsters there. So those traditional images of the sirens and the sea monsters, all the H.P. Lovecraft stuff, that really comes from, again, that alchemical manuscript description of the process of dissolution, where you go into the void of your own unconscious and you see what's there. And that is helping you to release trauma, to go into the past, soul retrieval, all kinds of things that actually help you to work out what's been frozen, what's not been flowing, but just repeating over and over, repeating cycles start to soften up. And what I love is that the alchemists described tears as being the body's natural process of dissolution, because the salt in the tears, they interpreted as being the hardened patterns of thoughts, resentments, and bitterness actually dissolving through the water of your tears and being released. So the flood.
Of course. And don't we all know that? Like anytime you've had a really good cry, you know, it's almost like a really big storm and then the air is pure and clear afterwards.
Yes, exactly. So that flood. And also, you know, the Great Flood from the Bible, that's an image of dissolution. It's purifying, but it's also a little frightening because we're still in the black phase. We're still dealing with the darkness, the shadow. The third stage of the black phase of alchemy, the third and final stage, is associated with Mars and the separation. So this is where all of that churning water, everything that's been dredged up from the bottom of the ocean or the lake, or however you want to look at it, everything that's been stirring, now is going to be submitted to a process of purification, which is called separation. Now, separation in the alchemical lab was aerating and sifting and sorting, and actually removing the things that no longer serve, that no longer represent really truly what is eternal, what no longer align with what your soul truly wants. Truly is. And in a really simple way, what the alchemists were doing is they were separating the dark and heavy material attachments from the eternal light.
Right. The dross. Well,
Exactly.
here's the thing about, I love this. This is a great, I didn't think we were going to go in this direction, but what I love about this too is, you know, I think there's a disregard for what could be the usefulness of a planet like Mars or the energy that Mars, you know, represents, right? And so at this level, you know, talking about the fever that burns off the poison, talking about the usefulness of a separating energy that we have to live with, the idea that, you know, there's an old expression about how do you carve it? The student says to the Zen master carver, how do you carve a perfect elephant every time? And the Zen master carver says something like, I carve away all that is not elephant. Well, that carving away of all that is not is a function that in the psyche of humanity, we really, really need. We need to carve away in our individual lives what we don't need. And I can't count the times that the separating that Mars does as he travels through any sign. Every 2 years, he goes through a whole orbit of all the zodiac signs in the zodiac, that things will be ending, separating, coming to, you know, to separate from the person, the job, the home, or whatever you're separating from. And hindsight goes, that was a great thing.
Exactly. Separation is natural. And the thing that's beautiful about alchemy is that you've experienced every stage on your own, whether you intended to be doing alchemy or not. It is completely natural. It's a natural process that's unfolding in the earth, as well as in our own lives. But when we actually consciously open up to that process and go through it with our eyes open, then it becomes something that is tremendous. It's extremely powerful in terms of how you can not only consciously move through something that you've been blocked on, but you are also aware of how many times you've done this before and also where you've gone wrong. So where we go wrong in separation is pretty clear in our world today, because separation, it divides the psyche. it divides the psyche, and immediately you begin that process of projecting. Now, Mars in Scorpio is particularly prone to this quality of consciousness that seeks to find an object of either desire, lust, passion, desire, something that brings great pleasure, and becomes fixated on that, obsessed with it, projecting all of your ideals of love, happiness, and pleasure onto an external object. Or there's also the projection of your own violence, hatred, and rage. And you find an enemy who represents that. And now that's outside of you, conveniently separated from you. That's not me, that's them. And now you have this enemy that you're obsessed with taking revenge upon, taking down. And that, of course, is where war comes from, all kinds of war. Even, subtle disputes between neighbors. This is this quality of projection, which is coming from an unconscious place, not being able to understand in that moment. And we all do it. I mean, I do it too. I absolutely do this. But I also know that I do this and I try to catch myself. I can pull myself out of the trance from time to time and start to integrate that.
Well, I can say something about that in astrology, like my practice with clients over the years or people I've known, because what we're talking about is a distortion of what Mars is, the goodness of what Mars is capable of being in some sense of distortion, like projection, enemy out there, inability to own the inner divide, right? A house divided shall not stand, Jesus 101, unable to hold the inner divide and the tension of opposites, Marion Woodman 101. So, you can't figure out the tension opposites within yourself projected out. But I notice in clients' charts when they have Mars unavailable, particularly in the 12th house, like, so in ancient astrology that I practice, that's not a semi-sextile. The 12th house compared to your first house identity is in aversion. So you're blind, you have blinders on like a horse, and you really can't witness the Mars in your chart. Now, you can't witness the Mars in your 8th house or your 6th house or your 2nd, but the worst one is the 12th. And what happens is that these people have anger issues and the inability to get in touch with their anger. And it's like, I've seen it so many times that I'm not angry, or the client's going, no, I never get angry. I'm like, okay, let's talk about why you never get angry, because anger is a healthy emotion. It allows you to release something. It's what you do with the anger that matters. Do you shoot someone because you're angry? Just like screaming under your pillow in your house.
Exactly.
So, we need to represent Mars, in his good side, that, like you said, the alchemical process of separation that's needed to go on to the later stages as you complete the black phase. So I wonder if today what we might do to make something really different for the all signs that I've never done before is to look at each of the Mars Cazimis, which is going to play out in everyone's life between the 17th of November at about 2 years. There's a hot spot in the sky. It's a Scorpio 12 house real estate, one of your houses per sign, and where that alchemical deeper process might want to be opening up for that sign over the next couple of years. That would be kind of fun. What do you think?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Instead of going like, this is your home, your mouth, your husband, your money, your kids. And I can do that on a separate video anyway, because I always do 2 videos for every major event, because I'd like to bring to my audience what you're bringing to the table, which is look at the archetypal, the psychic, the astrological, the magical, the alchemical energies of the planets, because as below, so above, and as above, so it is below. This is a whole mirror of reality. Like, we want to make it all about, I think astrology is a fallacy of astrology is planets make something happen. But the planets, as they move through the sky, are simply mirroring or reflecting or confirming in some ways what is already happening. And it allows us to understand it in a way, predict it to some extent, but it's all happening inside. It's all happening inside the one soul that we are, but we think we're many. And if you can take the astrology for a bit and use it in a different modality, like archetypal astrology will do, or psychological archetypal astrology would do, that's wonderful. But this is kind of nice to take it to the alchemical. So then I have one more question, if we were going to play that way. After we do the separation, what is the next stage, and what planet is the owner of the next stage?
So the next stage is conjunction, and that's the heart. And so essentially the alchemical terminology is spirit and soul. You separate spirit and soul so that you can remove the debris, all of the detritus, as you said, just the dross that are clouding or gumming up your spirit and soul. But then in the heart conjunction, which is ruled by Venus, of course, that conjunction brings spirit and soul together. And they call it the alchemical marriage, meaning that spirit and soul come together and they create something new from that union, which is the divine child. And so from that conjunction in the heart, the divine child is born, and that is the quality of consciousness that begins to ascend up through the rest of the chakras. And, the metal that's associated with conjunction is copper, which is very interesting because copper is a metal that just easily blends with other metals, just like Venus. Copper loves to blend with other metals and be melted down and mixed together with others. And Mars is associated with iron, which is another very interesting, quality of alchemical metaphor, because iron is what allows our blood to function and be oxygenated. Iron is also magnetic, which is something to think about. Magnetism is another quality that we are looking at with especially Mars and Scorpio. Having a magnetic desire, a pull, a draw that is turning your attention to really focus on something, to focus on a goal, to focus on a desire, whether it is something that's really malefic, like wanting revenge, or something that's really kind of over the top delusional, like becoming obsessed with lust. Nevertheless, those dark experiences are important because we all have them. They're in there. They're ancestral memories. They're a part of our culture. We're living in a world that values war above all things. And we are psychologically tormented every single day, all the time, which is another thing that is very important to recognize about the scorpionic realm. It is representative of what is hidden. It's the dark waters. It comes from a place that is invisible. So we associate that with the deepest recesses of the psyche, the invisible realm of magic and the occult, sorcery, certainly things like black magic. And what I would call black magic, aside from the traditional forms of sorcery, but the black magic that we all know and love and hate, is mass media propaganda. The quality that is used to weaponize information to get into the subconscious mind through a back door by invisible means, implant ideology, and turn people into subjects of ideological wars that literally have nothing to do with them. And yet they become possessed by these,
That's a great word. So when you talk about Scorpio, is possessed, The interesting part about iron, though, that you mentioned too, I mean, yes, it's magnetic, but it's also polarized. There's always a south and north node to magnetism. And that polarity, you couldn't see it any more than the recent war in Israel with the Palestinian and the Hamas/Palestinian nation, is the Netanyahu's declaration that is at war between the children of light and the children of darkness. And then Mars being iron, right? Not to go too much into politics, but Netanyahu has his Mars conjunct the Mars of Israel in Leo, and conjunct Pluto for Netanyahu in his ninth house of religious fervor. But also the irony, or not irony, the word irony is that the war against Hamas is called the Iron Swords. They named it the Iron Swords, iron, Mars, missiles flying. And the last bit of that weirdo, do you guys remember? It's about the enchantment, and the soul needs absolute need for unforgiving need for enchantment, right? Remember, that's why I'm going to tell you this. Hephaestus is the armor of the gods. He's the husband of Venus. He created the thunderbolts of Zeus. He created the weapons of the gods, particularly Zeus of Mount Olympus, right? Boom. That was one of his jobs besides being the ugly husband of Venus, who made her a magic girdle or whatever that is. And basically, the asteroid Hephaestus, the armor of the god who made the thunderbolts of Zeus, the weapons of Zeus, is sitting within 3 degrees, if I remember correctly, but on the midheaven of Netanyahu. I mean, can you make this stuff up? He's born to be associated with thunderbolts and weapons and iron swords. And this stuff is just mind-bending. But see, that's all playing out there, where it could have played out in here somehow for every person involved.
I do have like a final inspiring point about the ultimate purpose of Scorpio and where the Cazimi is going to be in the 3rd decan. So the final degrees of Scorpio.
Thank you. I'm not a decan person. I'm always trying to catch up on that. Tell us about it.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, the story of a sign plays out in 3 chapters, just like any great drama, right? And so the first decan of Scorpio is where we enter into the middle of fall and everything is withering. And so Mars actually rules that decan, and it's all about the predatory instinct that hunger always catalyzes. When you have want, you begin to become far more predatory, far more instinctual. And so that feeling of loss and lack really brings out the sharpness, the sharp teeth, the sharp claws, and also the fact that death is approaching. The death of the sun has already happened. The death of the earth is all around. And so things feel a little more desperate. And that's what that energy feels like. The second decan of Scorpio is where you have just surrendered to the fact that the outside world and the sun's light is no longer going to give you what you need. And so you must enter into the void within. You must go within. You have to explore that internal world. You have to withdraw into your own psyche to find the strength to endure, and also to discover what's going on in there. Since we've been busy all summer, like, what's going on in here? Well, who am I? Like, what do I really want? And what am I doing? And what's beautiful about that quality is that you go within and you begin to explore the underworld, which is the realm of the past, memories. You begin to ruminate on everything that you've experienced this year and perhaps throughout your entire life. So you have a little life review. And the danger of that is you can get very nostalgic and trapped in the past. The beauty of that is that Mars is about separation from even those attachments. So you can heal by exploring your memories. You can get lost in echoes and memories and delusions and nostalgia, but ultimately the third decan of Scorpio brings it back out to acknowledge that what must die is in fact a sacrifice for the future. It's a necessary sacrifice for the future. And you have to acknowledge that the things that you're surrendering or letting go of, or the things that have died, dead dreams, lost relationships, the things that cause us so much pain, when you let them go and you let them be buried and you give them over to the process of alchemy, they will be resurrected. And what's actually being resurrected is your own spirit, which is what Sagittarius is all about. So when Sagittarius arrives, the sun hasn't gotten any brighter and there's no more life. But Sagittarius is all about that celebration, because what has been discovered in the final decan of Scorpio is that my desires, my external desires, my material desires, whether it's for revenge or for objects of lust, those things do not actually bring the joy that I'm looking for. They don't fill that space that I'm trying to fill. The hunger is not so much about material hunger. It's actually a spiritual yearning. Realize like, oh, I can let go of those desires. Those things were just navigating. They were just about finding navigation, or giving you motivation to take action and to explore. But the real discovery is that light within. It comes from God. It comes from source. It comes from spirit. And so those spirits are resurrected. And that's what's happening in the third decan of Scorpio. And so when we have a Cazimi in the third decan, Mars is like really going through the shadowlands right now. We're really exploring how separated we've become from ourselves, how divided we are within, how divided we are in the world. And we're really getting kind of haunted by a lot of our obsessions, addictions, the things that possess us. But the Cazimi represents a real cut, a real clearing of some things that we don't have to be haunted by anymore, or we don't have to be obsessed with anymore. Maybe things that we thought we could never unclutch our fingers from, we just let go of, release it, understanding that it's going to come back. It's going to be restored. It's going to be something that is resurrected in our life as renewed creative energy, spiritual energy, joy. And so not clinging to the past, holding on to a corpse, letting go.
I love this stuff. Oh my God, I love this stuff. Okay, so I'm learning so much from you. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. And it's like, maybe this, as we go through the signs, it can be about what are you deeply, truly, soulfully, actually hungry for, so that you can let go of the the thing that held you back or was, that possessed you, because there's a renewal coming through this Cazimi over 2 years of your life. And what is also brilliant is this: in 1959, October 30th, Mars in the heart of the sun in Scorpio, Decan 1. 5 degrees of Scorpio. 1991, November 8th, 15 degrees, Decan 2.
Wow.
We are 2023, 23 degrees, or 24 degrees in Decan 3. We're literally living through this era in which Mars is marching through this process that you just described.
Oh my God, that's really cool. I did not know.
And I didn't even get this kind of progression because I'm like new to the whole looking at the decans and getting my figuring it all out, like Austin Coppock's book. I took a class with him years ago. Then I've got some great content from Marina at Dark Star Astrology, but it's not my specialty, but it really keeps pulling me in. So I have one question about the decan, and then we will do all signs with this new energy that we have. Oh, it's so much fun. Okay. What I want to ask is, there's a tarot card with each decan. Is this one the Seven of Cups?
That's right.
And that's someone looking at these cups with these, like a snake coming out of one cup and something coming out of another. What is that about? Hang on. Let me grab it for people who I have so many tarot books in my house. It's redonkulous. But I'll think it has a traditional image. Okay, you start talking about it and I'll find it.
Okay, so the Seven of Cups, the traditional Golden Dawn title for the Seven of Cups is the Lord of Illusionary Success. And so what that actually reveals is the quality of consciousness where you have essentially you're completely delusional and you are lost in daydreams, fantasies, where you believe that your joy and happiness will be fulfilled by, and the cups are usually like, they're either clouded or shrouded, or there's just like a tiny little image that's arising from the cups. So it remains very mysterious as to what on earth is this person dreaming of?
So I'll just show it. Yeah, and I'll just show it because when I talk, I get this full screen. So people here watching will see what she's talking about. This is a classic Rider-Waite deck, and there are these cups shrouded in fog with various things coming out of them. Okay, continue.
So it shows how you project your own shadows onto others and how you project your ideals onto others. You know, the worship of others outside of you and the hatred of others outside of you. Total disassociation from the fact that all of this is sourced within you and you're not separate from these things. And so the desire that initially causes action and is actually a very healthy thing becomes this total dissolution into delusion. And the real beautiful thing is that what it shows is that we've become ignorant of our power. We've become ignorant of our ability to actually wake up and actually live with potent, real focus and motivation. And this shows how our desires become a trap, which is exactly why we end up, by the end of Mars's transit through Scorpio, we end up waking up from these delusions, no longer thinking that those things are the answer or those things are the problem outside of me, so separate from me, poor innocent me. I'm just in the center. I either am victim to my separation from my desires, which would bring me joy, or I'm victim to my separation from my enemies who are nothing to do with me, nothing like me. And of course, this is like the problem with the world right now. It's very hard to actually wake someone up from that delusion when they're in that. But it is a cloud. And that's what the Cazimi, in my opinion, is a really potent wake-up call from. And there's a lot of repressed fears and desires that are getting projected all over the place right now, collectively. And I feel like, right now, it's very interesting that actually Robert Louis Stevenson, who was apparently a very gentle man, he was described as being such a gentle soul, but he had his Mars and Scorpio at this same degree of the Cazimi.
Wow.
And he wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is that initial, like, it's this way before Freud and Jung. He was very potently and mythically aware of this quality where you can just separate yourself from your dark side. And that's what the story is about. It's about a man who makes a poison and separates his shadow from himself so that he can believe delusionally, like the Seven of Cups, that man, that murdering criminal who stalks the streets of London at night is not me.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. It reminds me of that movie, The Forbidden Planet, where the scientists all die on the planet when they find the alien technology that's a helmet. It's from the 60s or 50s. And then a rescue mission goes there, and then they start to have the same problem. They're using this alien technology helmet that allows you to manifest stuff, basically, and a wish fulfillment helmet. But what it's based on the Freudian idea of the id, because what the alien technology did was wipe out the planet's civilization because people's unconscious repressed monsters were given real life form and destroyed everything.
Exactly. That's it. 100%. And what's really beautiful, and it's not apparent in the image, but every decan has its own planetary ruler. So Mars is the ruler of Scorpio always. He rules the whole story. But the only planet that Mars gets along with is Venus. And what's very interesting about that is that he doesn't just get along with Venus. He doesn't dominate Venus. Venus conquers Mars. And so he has this need, very much like how, high-powered CEOs always have dominatrixes on the side. They do. But Venus conquers Mars. And so Venus is actually like the decanic ruler of the third decan of Scorpio. Oh. And what that tells us is, okay, so all this delusion that we've gotten trapped in, all the inner conflict, all the projection, we've really gotten deep into our own psychology, and we could get stuck there, or we could figure out a way to sublimate it. We could figure out a way to integrate these issues. And so what I love about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is that this story, it ends really tragically. Dr. Jekyll ends up realizing that he is Mr. Hyde and he kills himself. It's a very sad story. But the message of how to heal or how to integrate is actually in the writing itself, the work of the artist to actually create rather than destroy. And that's how you leave separation. So the creation happens in the heart. It happens with Venus. It happens when spirit and soul come together. When we get stuck in separation forever, we are constantly deconstructing and never constructing. And this is one of the things I found about school. I had so much respect for school, and then I get into school and I find out, most of academic work right now is just deconstruction. They have absolutely no desire to create anything or to build anything. They want to tear everybody down. Your politics and your religion and your culture, just tear it all apart because it's antiquated or it's out of style or it's this or it's that. But never do they want to build something or create something or bring something back together. So what the answer to Mars, answer to separation is, the final conclusion of separation is that we're done deconstructing. We have cleared the poisons, we have cleared the dross, and now we're bringing it all back together. And we're just acknowledging that it is through the act of creation and the act of art and the act of love. It is through creating harmony once again, loving your neighbor. Again, Jesus taught us how to do everything. We don't listen to him, but nevertheless, he laid it all out very clearly. The answer to completing that process of separation is bringing it back together.
Right.
And choosing.
Didn't he say love thy neighbor as yourself or something like that? I mean, in other words, it wasn't just love your neighbor, but love yourself too. It starts in here and then it goes out naturally. That's why enlightened people don't have to listen to the tablet that says thou shalt not kill. Mostly an enlightened person is in a state of an ongoing causeless love for self, for other, for all of creation. And so, you don't need a rule because you're not like trying to be that place of the conjunction or the union, the Venus part of the next stage in the heart. Right? The extension of a natural union within is this state of creation, of not projecting yourself into enemy, opponent, conflicts continually, not having to follow a rule that you don't want to kill your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. And creation just happens naturally. It's spontaneous when polarities come together. Electromagnetic, boom. It's just incredible. So yeah, it's about bringing the negative and the positive poles together, the masculine and the feminine side together, the dark and the light within you together. all those divisions that we have within us that we are, I mean, we separate all of them and like exist now, I think socially, just in a constant state of war between all sides. Anything you can divide.
Oh, polarity's gotten extreme right now. The middle ground, the middle way, the gray zone, the nuance, the subtlety has been lost. You're here or you're there, and then boom, it goes like this. With anything in this reality right now, there's no middle ground, and it's really hard to stand in the middle. When you try to stand in the middle, even then, people will say you're on this side or the other. As I'm having that problem on my channel when I try to talk about the astrology of things like the war in Israel. People say, "Oh, you're defending this side or that side." Actually, I'm not. But people want to create that polarity. So today, what I'd love to do, I'm going to bring up the sky so we can see it, and we'll go through the all signs. I'm kind of getting this vibe of, as you can, ask yourself what you're really hungry for, last decan, where you're ready to embrace the union of the polarities, where you're ready to get ready for that new stage of creation that's available as we move into the next stage, the fourth stage of alchemy. What would this look like in a person's life from the rising sign perspective?
Yeah,
okay, so let's go. I'm going to show the sky to everybody. I have it ready. And I could never remember, for some reason, my brain keeps misfiring at what degree this is happening. I've got a 25 degree, 37 minute Scorpio Cazimi. Is that what you've gotten?
Yes, exactly. 100%, 37 degrees. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we have that particular chunk of real estate is the last 10 degrees, the last decan of the sign of Scorpio, as we already went into. These asteroids are here from a YouTube video, so you can ignore them. That's Asteroid America, that series, like the rescuing mama Persephone herself. So we'll just ignore that. I think I'll take them out so people don't have to look at the clutter of asteroids that were from another video and make it much more simple. Let's take out all of the angles and make it more clean. There we go. Perfect. Clean. And let me just change to whole sign houses. It's pinned in place. And let's move it. And we'll just whip through these signs together. Well, I have to say, and everyone at her metamorphosis replay class, because it is a 3-day thing, but you get the replay, you're going to get more of this kind of deep dive. And I really think that where you are taking astrology, Racheal, is amazing. This is like how to use it in a psychological, spiritual, alchemical way for transformation. Am I getting am I expressing your classes and your teachings in the right way?
Absolutely. I'm really inspired, or have been really inspired for many years, by the work of Marsilio Ficino, and it really all starts with him. And the reason why I'm so inspired is because he was the son of a physician, and he therefore was trained in medicine. But then he became this philosopher and theologian, and he translated the Hermetic corpus as well as all the ancient Greek philosophy into Latin. So he is the father of the Renaissance. Without Ficino's translations and the reclamation of that ancient knowledge, there would have been no Florentine Renaissance. But wow. His particular interest in astrology and alchemy was to do what his father did, to practice medicine, but medicine for the soul. So he was a shaman, essentially, and a great Christian theologian as well, who was never tried for heresy. And it's a fascinating thing.
That's a miracle. That's a miracle.
It actually really is, and he's just, so his work just kind of made me see things this way.
He must have had protective angels with him. That he wasn't stuck in a dungeon for his, heretical viewpoints. Wow.
And he also manifested some very powerful friends, because he worked for Lorenzo de Medici, of course.
What was cool. So the Florentines. What was his era of, actually, what was his time frame of living? That dates again?
Oh, he lived in the 1400s. So
1400s. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. That is so darn cool. Probably you had a past life together, or you're a reincarnated version of him. So, let's go with that. Check out the asteroid for his name. So here we have the sky. And so again, we've already covered the idea, I can't get rid of that asteroid America. It's too much work. So just ignore the little American symbol of the eye and eye of Horus on the dollar bill. Just ignore that. So we're going to go through each sign. We're going to go from a deeper perspective than your car, your mortgage, your husband, your wife, your home, I'll do that video separate later on for you guys. This is too rich, too juicy, too meaningful. I want to stay on on that level of discourse with this today. So I hope all of you will find this idea of renewal, a move towards creation, letting go of the hungry ghosts, the things you really don't need and want that you used to be hungry for, and you're moving into a readiness to look at what it is you really truly are hungry for, what you would desire from a different place in your own being that allows for that creation and that renewal and that hope and faith and optimism, right? Because the next stage is Sagittarius. Whew. Okay. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, so I'll just say, I really am like going to have to follow your lead on this one, but I'll say something and you can chime in and you can start the next one. All right, so Aries, Sun, Moon. First of all, Aries rising, this is definitely for you. Sun and Moon listen secondarily, but try all three and see which fits the best. Okay, everyone, I always say that to everybody. India, they love the Moon as a first house delineator, and the Sun can be your father figure, purpose and career. Moon, mother figure, safety needs in the body. Sun can be your deeper eternal spirit, and Moon could be your like more curmudgeonly soul crusted with fate and karma. But and the ascendant is the viewpoint from which you're addressing reality. So that's why we like the ascendant, because it really captures most of what you experience. You're at the steering wheel of the first house, looking around at all the other places. Okay, so that's the explanation before we start for people who don't know why I prefer your ascendant for these. So, but all three are good. So Aries Sun, Aries Moon, and rising sign or ascendant. So there is this Cazimi last seen in 1991 in the fall, and you would always add 2 years after that for transformation in eighth house matters. And from my perspective, the eighth house is a spiritual liberation house where we can divest of our a false identity in order to find out who we really are. It's one of the three moksha or liberation homes in Indian astrology. To me, it's also filled with the spooky and the magical and the paranormal and the ghosty. And if you have never dived into the mysterious nature of reality to look at the more psychological and soulful parts of reality, this might be a beginning of that part of your story over the next 2 years. But also maybe your shadow is there. What would you say about that? And I'd love to let you riff on it from the alchemical perspective.
Well, actually, from the alchemical perspective, the eighth house is the house of alchemy because Scorpio is naturally housed there when Aries is rising. And so what I would definitely say is that there's a lot of potential to really cut yourself free, liberate yourself from debts and a feeling of indebtedness, obligation that you're not actually obligated to. And the obligation that you have felt is, in fact, a delusion that is based on your own self-condemnation or your own sense of, need to do penance for something that you are either not guilty of or you have already been forgiven. Like the sense of obligation to things that are, in fact, killing you is something you can be cut from, cleared from. So be willing to let yourself be freed of indebtedness. And it could actually be very mundane as well, and actually be like you're able to clear some debts, financially speaking, which would be great.
Right. And using real life debt as a symbolic way of feeling indebted to some sort of shame or betrayal or guilt or abandonment wound. And a great book, The Mind Body Code, talks about the three primal human wounds being shame, abandonment, and betrayal. And all those really fit in how people react and act out from eighth house places, right? Dark places of betrayal, shame, or abandonment seem to very often happen through eighth house events. So, but those are just stories, right, of the character getting trapped in the poor me, because you're so much greater than the character, and the certain stories that occur to you aren't happening to you. I know they feel like it, but they really are happening for you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. And one more thing I say about the eighth house in my experience is that if you've never been a ghost whisperer and that's something you're interested in, this is your chance, because this is where those dead people are knocking on the door. It was my daughter's got a lovely placement in her eighth house, and she definitely has that ability. And I've noticed that it awakens that in people. And so there's a new beginning here for some people of that part of their perceptual apparatus.
Yeah.
Yay. So why don't I let you lead with Taurus, and then I'll follow you.
Okay. So, seventh house, I feel, sorry, it's dry throat. I needed.
Oh no, I'm always drinking water on my channel. Critics be damned. Let me slurp.
Okay, so seventh house of relationships. Again, I see that the landscape, and this is an angular house, so it's very, very important. the landscape of the way that you are giving and receiving, your idea of reciprocity in your most significant relationships, the way that you are either hiding a lot of yourself in order to remain in a particular relationship, or, coming on too strong and being very, imposing and aggressive so that you can always get your way. Something about the way that you approach your most significant relationships is dying and will be cleared at this Cazimi, so that for the next 2 years, you can actually relate to people in a completely, or maybe not a completely different way, but in a purified and refreshed way. And I believe that whatever desperation was behind the excessive timidity or the excessive aggression is going to reveal itself to have been a false path. That in fact, the way that you approach things without those manipulative tactics, because being overly timid is just as manipulative as being overly aggressive. Without that manipulation as one of your go-to desperate tools, you will find that in fact you have a lot more power, because it's coming from a higher source. It's coming from inspiration. It's coming from love. It's coming from a place that is not desperate or hungry. Instead, it feels content and satisfied, and therefore has real power. So yeah, relationships, significant, like marriage, and also anything that's significant with one-on-one clients, or perhaps even if you are a client, a significant relationship you might have with a therapist or somebody else that's really important in your life right now. Just cutting the manipulative tactics that you thought that you needed to use. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. There's always something when I look across at that seventh house, because the most alien of all is the other, right? We can talk about the UFOs on the White House lawn and the aerial phenomena, but the most alien of all is always the misperception that there is another, because I don't believe that that's true, but we're sort of like sparks of God in individual bodies. So I think there's a lot of times when I see that Mars transit through the seventh that people have to come in, let alone a Cazimi, come into contact with their own aversion and repulsion, or approach and avoidance, right? So, we are wanting to unite, but we're also repulsed by uniting. And so I often see a classical Mars transit in the seventh is facing that friction between the urge to unite and the desire or the natural impulse to separate or to repel away. But in a practical level, if there is a relationship in your life, Taurus, that you really think is, at this point, you can't do it anymore. You're possessed by the person, you're possessing them. Something's not right here anymore. This can literally look like a Cazimi ending a longer term committed love relationship. It can be a healthy end point for some new pattern in love and relationship. That's one of my feelings here as well.
Absolutely. A cut of a relationship, if it's necessary.
Like, if it's necessary.
Yeah, don't get scared. A healthy, loving relationship isn't going to get cut.
No, exactly.
You'll get pruned, but not cut.
Exactly. It could be pretty shears or it could be a scalpel, depends on what you need,
Yeah, so exactly. And if something does end, it's because it was founded on manipulation instead of genuine love,
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So let's move into the next story of, I'll start with this one, Gemini, Sun, Moon, Rising. I think, okay, we have a Cazimi in your sixth house, one of those kitchen drawer houses sometimes too. So what you can experience here is probably over the next couple of years, some kind of letting go of something you really wanted or desired, maybe even clung to, like a hunger for, in the way you are operating from your work environment, your workplace, maybe the office space, but also just the idea of work, but also health. And when Mars is here, I mean, he can cut out anyway without a Cazimi. He can help you in the house of his joy in Hellenistic astrology, cut, sever, and those aspects of your reality that are self-defeating and unloving for your better health. It's really often a transit where you can finally let go of some of those 12th house matters across the way, where you fall away from yourself. And often it's a substance or a habit that really isn't going to serve your wellness, because this is called the house of sickness. And because you can also experience pets here, there can be a big change of a situation with domestic animals, small animals over the next 2 years. And not to scare anybody, but if you have an elderly pet, this can be a signal that that's the end of that relationship, because your elderly pet may no longer want to be on the planet in the 2 years ahead. But at the deeper level too, feeling a lot about this Mars transit can have you go into a deeper level. It's one of the metacosmos houses, and it connects to between the worlds energy. And what would you like to maybe cut, sever, or end in order to become more creative in work that is destiny, not duty? Because often we get drudgery, duty, and a sense of, in quote, slavery to the work we do here, rather than being in a place of actual giving, service, and feeling in alignment with the work we are doing. So this could be a real reboot for alignment. That's a sense of that. How are you feeling, Racheal?
I love that perspective. It really just triggered for me the one of the images that's associated with separation is the parting of the Red Sea from Exodus. And that's a freedom from slavery, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage to actually leave a situation that has been, toil and slavery. And it's hard to leave the familiar. But I do see that this is a signature of being able to, start a new routine, which could include a tremendous liberation from something that felt like slavery.
So good. I have a progressed Gemini sun. I already know what I'm liberating myself from here. It's like I'm cutting my client load by 2/3 next year. I mean, we've already made the decision before the Cazimi, and the Cazimi can surprise me. We'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, moving forward. Not that my clients are drudgery. Now they're listening, going, I'm drudgery, I'm duty, I'm slavery. No, you're not. I love you guys, but I only have so much life force energy to give. So
yeah, you're only one person. And you have more life force for yourself. That's important.
it is. So like at least do something rather than nothing,
Yeah.
Okay, your turn. You start first. We'll just go back and forth.
All right. Cancer, sun, moon, and rising. So fifth house, I love to look at the fifth house as our creativity, the kind of creativity that we associate with the fun that we had as children, the free flow of creativity, just the joy of self-expression without all of that, self-consciousness in the way. And of course, it also is something that we associate with romance and, having some kind of breakthrough that gives us a new lease on life. And so to have this going on in your fifth house, one thing that I definitely see is that if you have been held back by tremendous fear in terms of expressing yourself or creating something or putting something out there, or if you've had a history of issues with dating that have just kept repeating over and over and over, just the same kind of person over and over, and never can get very far with anybody because you keep manifesting that same person, this really is a cutting or a liberation from the entanglements that are holding you back. And ultimately, over the next 2 years, what I see is a liberation of fun, creativity, and also the potential to date a different kind of person who is actually much better for you.
Got a little spicy scorpionic passion in that feminine Mars sign. I love that. Also children. I'll just add children. If you have children, this is a house of your children. It's also the house of making them too. But, which is the sexuality and the dating. But, you could be having a profound realignment regarding a relationship with a child. Maybe even just as simply as they're separating out because they're moving off to university and you're experiencing a new way of being with your child, because there's a really like a death of Mars in the heart of the sun in order for him to become a brand new spicy young Mars. So, you're going to have a change most likely regarding one of the relationships with your children, right? And it's going to be good for you because it's trining your Cancer ascendant. It's not a hard thing. It's not like, oh no, it's going to feel bad. No, you're going to like this new dynamic, I think, and which should feel enlivening. Similarly with creative projects too. You might start some incredibly brilliant new creative project, but you have to let something go first, something that really hasn't been it has been you were hungry for it, but it hasn't satisfied.
Agreed.
Yeah. Beautiful. Brilliant. I'm still looking at the direction we go. I had no idea what we were going to do today. I love what just naturally came up. Okay, my turn. Leo, Sun, Moon, and especially rising sign. Well, the fourth house is a house of your mother in the traditional astrology, where this death and rebirth of Mars is occurring. But it can also represent your family of origin, the childhood you experienced. You can experience your deeper inner work. It's one of those liberation houses in the Indian astrology, particularly the idea of liberating yourself or freeing yourself from something to do with the stories of your ancestors, the way you were raised, the culture and tribe to which you belong. Like, this is literally getting out of the cultural and tribal program, familial and ancestral program that has sort of cloaked itself over you. And, whether you're conscious of it or not, this is a deep soul work, death and rebirth for a lot of Leo, Sun, Moon, and rising. And it can lead you to, in a couple of years, change your home, move away from home, separate out from your mother or father, choose a different relationship to those two people, especially your mother. And sometimes I think when Mars is in the fourth house, it's very practical because, people born with Mars here often are exiled from their home. Julian Assange has Mars in his fourth. You may end up choosing to be exiled from the home of origin. You may, over 2 years, for some of you, make a decision, Mars, to move abroad and spend some time in a country other than the one you were born with. That's a very practical interpretation. Let's let Racheal go into the more alchemical.
Just for FYI though, I have a client, Leo rising, who's doing just that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But I love your point about actually being able to become liberated from the family conditioning, which can be very physical. We are born with DNA that's encoded for wonderful things, but also a tremendous amount of trauma. And, it's been looked at very deeply that patterns of trauma, after 3 generations of it repeating, it gets encoded into the DNA. And even the way the brain is structured, which is why we see so much, mental illness and also nervousness and anxiety inherited. But what alchemy is about is acknowledging that the spirit and the soul that are being housed with this body are more powerful. And so to be liberated from the conditioning that's in your body, the initial programs that you were born with, is absolutely possible. It's very true. And so I love that take, and I'm going to second that.
Yeah, I would use it for that myself, and going into a consciousness with that, and rather than have it clobber you on the head, So yeah, I love that. Beautiful, beautiful. This is so much fun. Hope you guys are enjoying this. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I got so wrapped up with doing this wonderful conversation, I forgot to give you all my prompts. So go ahead and catch up now with the like, subscribe, share this video. Please share it widely, and definitely help Racheal with her own astrology by checking her channel out as well. Okay, it's a Virgo story, and it's your turn to start first, is it? I'm losing track.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so third house of the way that we use our mind, the way we think, the way we perceive, the way we communicate, but also, neighborhood and siblings. So there's a lot in the third house. It's a little complicated. I'm going to focus on mind, study, communication. To be experiencing this Cazimi in the third house tells me that there is some kind of poisonous ideology that has been tormenting you, pulling you into its conflict, pulling you into its drama. But the whole experience of this transit of Mars is helping you to recognize that, to see it clearly, to deconstruct it, if you will, which is the process of separation, seeing it finally for the sort of mess that it is, and purifying it of its poisons. So it will either be at the Cazimi, the beginning of an utter liberation from that ideology, which is toxic, or it will be some innovation or evolution of that philosophical perspective or that, political ideology, or it could be many, many things. I'm not trying to limit it to just those areas, but you're going to be using your mind so much more clearly. You will actually have found clarity within muddled, dark waters. There is some light that reveals itself. And that's the light of truth, which, again, we crave truth so much. We crave truth as much as we crave anything else. And once you tap into it, it's impossible to not follow it and to let it grow and let it evolve. So I see some great revelation and catharsis in the way that you think. And I see you getting aligned with a path of truth that is meaningful to you and will change the way that you speak and the way that you communicate to others through maybe if you are a writer or a blogger or a teacher or a podcaster. There are so many ways to communicate now. You're going to be talking about it with enthusiasm.
Oh my God, I almost don't know what to add to that. I was going to say something very much the same. I always think of the ninth house is I believe and the third house is I think, and underneath all of that thinkingness really is some kind of need to separate out the way that you think, just like Racheal said, that is actually it is really something you don't inspect. We never do. We never inspect our thoughts. We never inspect why we think what we think, why we think our thoughts are real, or if you get really deep down the rabbit hole, thoughts become things and you go to the new thought movement, your thoughts can become tangible objects. You can think yourself into something. Like, a lot of times, your worst fears come true because you're thinking about them all the time. What if I, get this or that, health problem, and then you get that health problem. So a lot of this undoing, unraveling, separating out, and moving away from unconscious patterns of thought feels really true. I guess at practical level, neighbors and siblings and separation, but yet in a sextile to your Virgo identity, it feels good, and it may involve a necessary separation. We're not married to our siblings, we're not married to our neighbors. Sometimes it's okay to literally be allowed to separate out for your own well-being. And so for some of you who have these difficult sibling relationships or neighborly relationships, sometimes even cousins belong here, you might find out that, your attempt to desperately either pull it together with that person, or maybe you've avoided them completely. It maybe something balancing it will happen over the next 2 years after this Cazimi. That's my take on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, create a new relationship after you separate from the old. All right, so you are a Libra, sun, moon, and rising sign, and is a Cazimi in what we classically call your money or earnings house, your second house of resources and possessions and your speech, and sometimes the food you eat, like things you put in your mouth. And, Mars is really good at ending things, cutting and separating and, the wheat from the chaff. So for a very silly and practical level, there's a very strong possibility in the 2 years that follow, a lot of you are going to ditch the something, the gluten, the ice cream, the food style that's really not working for you. Your earnings, of course, come from here, the way that the resources are coming to you to feed that first house of survival, or like your identity, being on the planet, your ascendant. And so you are looking really squarely at maybe you have been possessed by a way of making money, or you have been consumed by it, or you've been clinging to it, or, there's something going on that you were hungry to do, but it may be like, okay, and is that literally going to satisfy you? And are you finding that spark of that union of soul and spirit, as Racheal says, where the true creative impulse can happen? So if you're a slave to some kind of money-making endeavors where you feel that you're trapped there, or you must, but or you should, this could be a real reinvention here. I will add, Mars has the tendency to push us into an area of change when we don't even want it. So if you resist what you already know is true, that you have to, I have a Libra, I know she wants to desperately leave her work right now. That's just an example. I know many Libras who desperately want to change the tact of earnings. But if you don't choose it, it will choose you. That means getting fired from a job, or having a rage and quitting your job in a total scene over the next 2 years. Those are some thoughts that are coming to mind. What are you getting, Racheal?
I see that as well. And the trap of being comfortable, the devil, can get you stuck in such a rut. And of course, Scorpio is a fixed sign. It gets obsessive, it gets fixated, it becomes really frozen a lot of the time in its pattern, especially when it comes to fulfilling something like hunger, the resources that we need, second house stuff, the foundation of our ability to sustain ourselves. And so the feeling of being stuck in a rut is very palpable, and this is an opportunity to really find a way through, or to see the light at the end of the tunnel and follow it. Because the reality, again, is that the creative inspiration that we can tap into is the answer to all of our problems in life. It's opening up to inspiration, to the divine, to the muse. And I also know how hard that is when you feel desperate, or you feel stuck, or you're obsessed. But when you just allow yourself to create instead of consume, you don't get trapped in a tunnel where there's no more creativity. You're just on a track. You just do your routine. You're stuck on a track. This is how you believe you can meet your needs. This is the only way. When you get out of that rut, which is what this really represents, you have to ask for help. You have to open up to inspiration, things that you can't actually think of, but that are going to reveal themselves to you anyway. And they will be awesome, miraculous, very unexpected lights at the end of the tunnel, or opportunities to do more, to do better than what you were doing before.
Absolutely. I love the way you said that. I mean, because it could feel otherwise if you don't accept the light at the end of the tunnel or the goodness that this is about. You might actually resist this, or you might be listening going, I love my job. I don't want to leave my job. But I mean, you may not love your job, because within 2 years, there may be work earnings changes one way or the other. Some people are old enough, like 1991, this happened. If you're one of my older listeners, go back to what happened in 91, where there may have been a change through November of 91 to 93 in some fundamental way in which earnings are achieved or resources are acquired. Yeah. Wonderful. Again, you get to go first, I think, on the big one. You get the drum roll, please, for the Scorpios.
Oh my Lord. Okay. All right. So obviously, Scorpio risings, this is a big deal for you. And the first house is one of those things that it's got so many associations, and it's kind of hard to pin down a lot of the time in simple terms. But I really like to think of the first house as the energetic skin that you feel life through, that you perceive everything through. This is the sense perception that you have of life, and it informs your reality, your perceptions so much. It's where you find identity, and also the beliefs that naturally bloom from identity, because what we identify as begins to create a worldview, the things that we believe. And I don't mean that in a ninth house sense. I mean what you believe about yourself, who you are, what you're capable of, what you represent when you show up to a party, what you represent in your world. And so the first house is something that is getting for you it's getting a very sharp pierce. It's getting a very sharp cut from a way that you have been identifying, or a way that you've been perceiving yourself and maybe the world around you, that's actually false, or it is something that needs to evolve, because it's actually most likely based on something that we would call trauma, which has numbed you or diminished your spirit, or has blackened a part of your heart. And there's no judgment. We all go through these things, but the necessity of opening that up back out to the light, and actually retrieving or resurrecting a part of yourself that's been hiding away, that's been deep within, that's what this is about. And so there's going to be actually more of you, which means that you may start perceiving things that you'd rather not perceive. I know Scorpio risings are so psychic. You can always tell when people are lying. When somebody is being false. You could see through the surface level of things. And I know that is a big burden for Scorpio risings in many ways, because not everybody can see that. You get gaslighted a lot, and it also hurts to see that layer of things because of how much pretension and also deceit there is in the human world. So nevertheless, numbing that out, hiding that from yourself, not using that gift in some ways is a great detriment to yourself, because those sensitivities are not just for you to, peer into other people's energy and know things you shouldn't know. It's a part of who you are as a creator. It's a part of who you are as an intellect and a mind. It's very important for you to be able to have that vulnerable, sensitive, perceptive quality all open and available. So this is going to kind of pierce through some scar tissue, break it up so that you can feel things with more depth, have your numbness transformed into feeling once again. And that does represent catharsis. That does represent transformation. That does mean that some kind of trauma actually is healed, integrated, brought back into the light.
Beautiful. I love it. You know, Mars is basically coming into a birth here. He's, you know, he's going to come out the other side and start his journey as a brand new Mars. So I want to always say, like, everything you said, Racheal, is very true. Like, you know, this identity shift that's profound. It's like you're being born again. It's like you're like literally born again. It's like a Christian, but you know, you're being born again. You, Scorpio, are having a rebirth. And some of you might be alive in 1991, November, you know, 91, add 2 years. My son's a Scorpio rising. That's when we moved from New York City to Washington, D.C. And he had friends in New York City. Funny enough, as a little kid, he had toddler group friends and stuff. And it represented a huge shift of identity through a shift of place. And a lot of times, you know, and that's what someone, I know a woman who had identity shift, a Scorpio rising female friend who had a divorce that year. So, you know, your identity can change as well because of across the way, you might snip at sharp swords. You know, I need to out of this relationship. I need to break away from this business partnership, this client. Quite often, this sword that's in your hand, not only are you revising your identity in the next 2 years and coming up with a brand new you, yay you, but you're also going to look at that other house across the way specifically and go, are these the people for me? Are these the clients for me? Is this the partner for me? Is this, you know, this my person? So I would say too, your discernment as this 2 years unfolds will include potentially a choice, a decision, and an action, Mars words, to end a relationship if it's not the right one for you. But you don't know who you are until you're born again. So the you that thinks you want that relationship, see who you are within the 2 year story.
Yeah, agreed. And gaslighting yourself, no more. You have to accept what you know in that deep, primal, intuitive Scorpio way. Use that perception for your own good.
Yeah, exactly. I so love that. Scorpios are so intuitive. When my son was little and I was trying to sell my house in Washington, D.C., I said, tell me, you know, when are we going to sell it and who's going to buy it? And he told me when, and he told me who he saw, a man with an accent from England. It was exactly the thing that happened. And now he's an adult 34-year-old guy who doesn't use his intuition consciously at all. Like he's like kind of ditched it for some reason, but my God, I cannot wait to see how he revises his identity. So, okay, so you got the big one. Good job. I'll start with the Sagittarius. Oh, you Sagittarius is sun, moon, and rising, full of faith, hope, and optimism, and all of the good stuff of the universe. In your 12th house, you will have a death and birth of Mars, a dying in the heart of the sun, Cazimi, last seen in 1991. Well, it's a very soul-worky house to begin with, and it's a very liberation from the dream, the matrix. It's kind of like when Neo gets unplugged from the matrix. You really go full on Buddha here. You can really, nirvana, samadhi, fully unplug from the illusory Leela, play of God, the Maya, and get into the real world of what's true. So if you're in a spiritual path and you are a Sag, this is amazing. You can really find this a liberating event. On the other hand, I love the idea that, you know, we do fall away, primary motion of the heavens, from ourselves in this part of the sky. And it's often literally where we do the things to ourselves to incarcerate ourselves, to isolate ourselves, to undo ourselves through a habit or pattern or addictive substance. It's literally where we put ourselves in our own timeout corner. And so if there's any way in your life that you keep doing this to yourself, these patterns, the saboteur, for example, can be fully extinguished for something new and creative and renewing to emerge. I pass the buck to Racheal.
Yeah, well, this is me, so I am a Sagittarius rising, and yeah, I mean, all of what you said, I feel is coming up. There's also been my dreams have been so intense. And even though I know that that is associated with such a transit, I still, you know, I'm kind of cynical about it until it actually starts happening. And it was remarkable how intense my dreams became. Not all of them entirely pleasant. And what I feel like this 12th house, Cazimi, is going to help a lot with is facing a lot of the demons of the collective unconscious, like things that feel they are a part of us, but they're outside of our time. They're so ancient. They're patterns that repeat beyond the scope of our life. and they reach into like just layers and levels of things that feel so beyond us as individuals. And there's something about the 12th house experience of having Scorpio there in the first place, and then this Cazimi, that I feel like is sort of like, I don't know, it's called sin eating in shamanism, where you actually, you kind of absorb the poisons and let your own awareness transmute it. And that's all I can say. It feels like that, like you are actually processing larger cycles of karma and pain than you can actually take full ownership of. And that's not the same thing as like denying that the other is a part of you. I don't mean like projection. I mean this like larger connection to the human story, the collective unconscious, eternity rather than linear time. And it feels to me in many ways like my dreams and a lot of the things I'm going through emotionally are really deep, like ancestral stuff that is just, it's intangible and confusing, which is why it always sounds crazy. But it has to be processed. Like the poison has to be faced, it has to be felt, it has to be processed. And so that's what I've been going through with this. And I hope for kind of some clearing or some cut from that oversaturation in what feels like etheric, otherworldly, collective unconscious dramas that are stirring and kind of drawing Sagittarius rising people in. Like,
Yeah, I love what you just said. I mean, I love the sin eater concept. I also like something about the 12th house. It reminds me of the whole Tibetan Buddhist idea that, when you die, you want to learn how to die. So when you die, you don't get trapped back in the wheel of reincarnation. And when you first die, if you're not an adept at dying and learning the rites of dying safely, you end up in the wish fulfillment realm. It's like a hall of mirrors. You want it, you get it. It feels great there. Like, hey, I wish I could talk to Jesus. And he shows up next to you on a bench, but you've just got yourself stuck in another illusory in between, before the bardo state, between this life and the next. And so any of you guys who are Sagittarius going through this intense soul work energy and this ancestral clearing and the sin eating and the collective unconscious, it really feels almost like you're being asked to step aside a little bit and realize, that the whole idea of the wish fulfillment realm is what our society runs on. The secret, get your wishes to come true. But why? Who are you beneath and below and underneath all of these ideas of the wish fulfillment part of your reality? I don't know where I went in that direction. It just came up to me. Maybe I'm channeling for Racheal.
No, you are, because I write a weekly forecast for my patrons, and throughout Scorpio, when Scorpio season began, I started with, well, actually, no, in Libra season, when Mars first moved into Scorpio, I started talking about the different underworld myths, starting with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Then I absolutely went into the Bardo from Tibetan Buddhism, and now like the Orpheus myth. So,
oh my God, I love it. I love it. I can't believe it. I feel we have a psychic connection. So her Sag and my Aries are like doing the fire hookup. Yeah. Okay, so that's beautiful. Okay, and I forgot you were Sag before I knew that, but thanks for reminding me.
Oh, cool.
All right, Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Rising sign. And this is going to be a Cazimi in the House of Good Spirit. New beginning, Mars is dying to be born again, and you are also maybe also birthing again some of the forward momentum, dreams, and wishes of your life. Now, this is kind of funny. It's kind of where you can, if you had a fairy godfather or a genie in a bottle, I always say, you probably asked your 3 wishes here. So it's kind of that place that you're striving to attain something that then rises into the 10th, and you can become, evidence of it here in the real world in your reputation, career. So it's your kind of hopes, your wishes, your dreams, or what you want to see happen. But it also can involve deeper connections to a chosen tribe. We're stuck with our family of origin. Our childhood friends are the 3rd. But then in the 11th, I find that it's kind of like where you want to build a group of allies. It's like in India, it's the house of the elder sibling, people who you can rely on, allies and benefactors that treat you like with good intention, a good sister, good brother, big brother, and finding that that dying here can be a real loss of a tribe as you lose that tribe to find a new one. And you may already feel yourself waning, like that old group of belonging. I don't even just mean a book club or, the Kirtan chanting group. I mean like any kind of social networks that you really felt were the ones for you. And now they're like really tired. Something has to change. So it can look like a wholesale change. I see often this happens like without the Cazimi, just because someone moves to another country and they're far, far away from their friends. And that's a Mars 11th house story for them. But a Cazimi is deeper because it's like, what are the kinds of people that you wish to call your friendship group, belonging tribe? Who are those people? Because now it's not just changing it because circumstances changing it. You're deeply going to choose something new. That's my take.
I see the exact same thing. And of course, the realization that your friends or your community are not good for you anymore or aligned with you anymore, or even have worse, been treacherous and deceitful, that is an extremely painful experience. But I do want you to remember that the Cazimi is like it's a seed planting as well, which is reminiscent of nature itself, which we do have to let things go. Things rot, decompose, and they die, but then new life is germinated. And so I would really meditate on that idea that the restoration and resurrection of community and friendships is also coming. And it will be something that's much better aligned with who you are now, what you really stand for. And there is really great joy in that. And I speak from experience because I've been through that and it really wasn't fun. But, and
Yeah.
I think it's because Mars Cazimi'd in my 11th house, Libra. Like, and I went through this. So it's
Yeah,
gonna
you've got recent memory from that Cazimi. Yes, exactly. That was 2 years ago.
yeah, and it was dark. It was really horrible. I found out so many people betrayed me, and I'm not projecting that onto you, Capricorn risings, but that's what I went through. And I am legitimately grateful for it now, because the ultimate truth is, why would you want to be friends with or be in a community with people who don't share your values and don't have your back? It's literally a waste of your life. So ultimately, when the separation is done, it's a beautiful thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm so glad you addressed the real life experience of it all. Don't forget, Mars has got swords, shears, pruners, knives, and sharp objects to cut, sever, and end, like the umbilical cord. But ultimately, you may want to be tied to your mother forever. Let's use the umbilical cord of toxic friendships. But at the end of the day, aren't you glad that you're not, because you're breathing and alive and on your own? So these are endings that are good for you, in other words.
Yeah.
Yay. All right, Aquarius is I'm one of you, sun, moon, and rising. Did I go first last time or did you? Oh, you,
I'll go. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
you go. You do me.
10th house. Oh my gosh, Aquarius rising. So 10th house of career, reputation, the legacy that we want to leave in this world, the influence that you have in this life. And also, I like to call the 10th house the house of vocation instead of career, because I think the word career is just it's been dulled by, our culture, whereas vocation actually has the Latin root vocare, which means voice, which means calling. So it's
Yeah.
your calling, your 10th house of calling. And to have this potent Cazimi in the house of your calling definitely shows me that whatever Seven of Cups experience you may have had regarding what you have to do to fulfill your calling, I definitely see that the calling is clarified. Scorpio in the 10th house is pretty fixated on finding their calling and answering that calling, and definitely is empowered to do so. It's not a weak sign in the 10th house. But what the problem is how do I get there? And what do I have to do in order to express my calling, or be the influence that I want to be, or rise to the level that I want to rise to? And fortunately, what this Cazimi represents is just clearing all of the mist and all of the delusions, paring things down in many ways as well, to represent actual potent, efficient, working smarter, not harder, and they're being more effective as a result, and ultimately realizing that, hey, all of those things that I was doing that were kind of dissolving my power or like spreading me too thin, which is the best way to put it, are completely unnecessary. And now I'm actually far more effective, far more influential, far more successful at getting whatever it is out there that I wanted to get out there, or leaving behind a legacy that is actually clarified and is meaningful to me. Of course, we're talking about Scorpio, stuff has to die. You got to sacrifice a few things. So you may be in a process right now of, letting go of some heavy weight, some extra baggage. And that can be hard. I know from my own experience that when my husband, who's my business partner, gives me advice about something I need to cut, and I don't want to because I'm attached to it, I can be quite stubborn, and we will fight. And sometimes I'm right, but a lot of times he's right, because he could see from an objective perspective. And I don't want to let something go, even though it's burning me out and exhausting.
Oh, yes. That's probably when you quit your newsletter. Beautiful, big, long newsletters you used to write. Didn't you step away from that? I remember you said, everybody, I'm putting all my heart and soul into it. Isn't that you? You had these gorgeous photos in your newsletter. Did you step away from that for a while?
I did not stop. I do a monthly, but I used to do so much more. And
yeah, there was something at one point you sent a letter out. But anyway, I get you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So you're talking about the pruning and the paring away.
And actually finding more potency, really, truly transforming your strategy for answering your calling by pruning, by reducing, by deconstructing how all of this is happening, and then bringing everything back together ultimately in finer form. So that's a really good news for Aquarius rising.
Now she channeled for me. I love it. Okay. So true. So back in 1991, when this happened for me as an Aquarius rising gang, I had been a literary short fiction writer. I had a novel in the works, screenplays and stuff like that. I was really beating down some successful tours and getting published and winning awards in literary short fiction. Screeching halt, 1991. Oh. And journalism too. And over the course of the 2 years of the Cazimi, I moved into a new career as a psychic reader. So you cannot make this shit up. So here Lori is, Aquarius rising. We know I'll be doing something different, and the next 2 years will show me what. So all of you Aquariuses are in the same boat as me. Welcome. I also would say one more thing about it, just because I think you covered it. If you really want to cling to something, let's say you work in a job 9 to 5, or you have a company you work for, you got a real thing going where you're not in charge and you can just choose. If you're not careful, if you hold on really tight here, Mars is about ending and cutting. And this often is like firing. I've seen people with a Mars transit every 2 years get fired from their job, let alone a Cazimi. So warning, warning, warning. Just like for me, I'm a self-employed, so I can choose or not choose, right? But if you have no choice, or your mind, you have no choice, then, I always notice there's a book called The Doom Loop. And what happens is you start a new career or job and you're nervous and you're fearful and you're not sure you can do it. And that's like the 9 o'clock position. And then the 6 o'clock position is you're getting good at it. You're feeling confident. You got your creds, you're like on. And then like the 9 o'clock position on the wheel is like you're entering mastery. You're like really moving with it. You can almost do it with your eyes closed. I mean, I'm at mastery with my astrology practice in terms of client readings, and you almost take it for granted because you just operate like a opera singer who's figured it all out, and you've got your gift and your skill in a perfect merger. Mm-hmm. And then you go down. You hit this other point, the doom loop. I can't remember what the order was at 12 o'clock, but you're at the midnight hour. And now you literally are going to sabotage yourself because you have no more challenge left in the career path. So if you're an Aquarius rising and you feel like you're hitting that doom loop part where you can do it really well. So it's not even, I don't like my job. You can do it so well that you can do it with your eyes closed, but then you get sloppy, you get lazy, you get bored, and you need a new Mars challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. It just came to me. I just channeled for myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I just really, really quick, when you lost your writing career and it was replaced by this psychic medium, amazing remote viewing, everything we talked about last time we spoke, did that feel like it was aligning you more with your calling? Did it feel like foreign to you? How did that feel?
The transition was hard because I was attached, to being this literary writer, and etc. So the universe doesn't let you off the hook. During that 2-year window, I enrolled for a Master of Fine Arts program and got a scholarship to George Mason University for my MFA in creative writing, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And I couldn't do it because I had a kid at home. My husband didn't want to support like some kind of care for the kid who had preschool but still needed coverage. So he wouldn't agree to it. So I went to a lesser school, American University, and I was so disappointed in the caliber of the classmates, the caliber. I had been published already, and I was got a scholarship to a top school in the United States, and I didn't do it. But when I took the lesser school, I hit that wall, and I just dropped out. And was like I didn't go gently into that good night. I struggled to accept that that wasn't my path.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Well, that was a long time ago. You've refined so much. I do. I suspect that this will be less severe. I'm not saying it won't have challenges, but like just the more refined we become, the easier it is to, you know, align with that change. So,
Yeah, at this point in my life, I pretty well am the girl who reads the sky, watches the signals, goes with the flow. Back
yeah.
then, it wasn't me. I was this one who like, put my consciousness first. But for all of you Aquarius risings, I gave you a story that sounds really difficult. You may not be that person. There's so much intimacy of your chart and how your sky lines up differently that it may just feel like, wow, that was great. I let go of that thing, and look at the cool shit that's happening in the 2 years later. So,
It's
but
like,
it is
oh,
like it is
yeah.
a seed. It is a seed. So something new is going to be born as something dies in your career and reputation space.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's me next on Pisces, isn't it? And then we're done. Well, we did one of my longest videos in a long time, by the way. We're going to hit almost the 2 hour mark, but that's okay. Sometimes these things are actually perfectly what they are supposed to be. I'm excited because this is one of my favorite interviews of all time, Racheal. All right. So Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising, the energy here. Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Okay, everyone. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising in the house of God, the ninth house, where you find religion, theology, beliefs, ideology, and you also find the deeper dharmic quest for meaning in your own life. And it's between the worlds metacosmos house. So yet your kind of spiritual vibes going on up here. You're going to have this new beginning, this new beginning. But something has to be let go of first. And it can be like literally losing my religion, like some faith or belief is getting ready to like kick the bucket so that something new can emerge. There's a rebirth here for you. And it feels like if I went way mundane, it could be like, a change of a country, a move to another country, big travel to another country. These are foreign shores and foreigners. But it also can be really deep because, underneath all of that ninth house stuff is a big question mark. What is the best use of my talents, gifts, and the path that I'm here to ultimately walk?
Mhm.
And like, what's my Dharma track? And so if you go back to 1991, like we said in the beginning, if you're old enough, November of 91 to 2 years, you might have some clue about how you really shifted gears back then. So that's kind of the gist of it for me. Oh, how do you see this?
Hmm. Well, always, ninth house philosophy and what we have faith in, what we espouse to believe in, what our worldview is. And I see that this could be a real purge of the faith that you have put in the wrong things, like having faith in the, the government to have your back and and help you out and look out for the well-being of human beings rather than imprisoning them and controlling them. There could be something that you've had faith in that is really false. Like you have more faith in, fear, more faith in um something like that really has no power. Superstition, I should say. Superstition. We all have a superstitious streak somewhere deep down inside, and we always like, again, to point the finger at other people who display superstitions, especially from other times. But superstition is just when you have a belief that a specific act or a specific event is associated with bad luck and misfortune, and so you avoid it. And so superstitions can form, and this is a real clearing of that to get you much more aligned with what is actually true, and therefore more, I think, humbled to actually to pray to the actual creative power in this universe, which you can call what you will, as long as it's truly meaningful for you. But what I'm talking about is the divine mind, the one, the all, as they say in Hermeticism, the creative principle in the universe, as the I Ching says, God with a capital G, supreme creator, whatever makes that real for you. And it's a matter of a lot of times just actually humbling ourselves and realizing, wait, I don't actually have all the answers, and I don't really know what the truth is. And so you actually ask and align with that and get help and receive a completely new path or a new insight or illumination, et cetera, et cetera. So cutting away superstition, whatever that might be, and instead connecting with your own inborn, divinely gifted connection to a higher power, which is the thing that helps you to create and to heal and to also to be a light for others. That's how it works.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Especially with the sun up there, that's the sun in the house of its joy with this rebirth of Mars. It's almost like find the part of you that's passionately engaged with the divine. And then you can do so much with that. You can be coming out the other end of that for some of you, almost proselytizing or being a preacher or a teacher or a mentor, a guide for other people, for some spiritual awareness that can emerge, especially with Neptune in the first house and Saturn making sure it's real. So for some of you Pisces, because you're all the mystics of the zodiac anyway, this can be a huge spiritual transit for you. And, unless you're clinging, like desperately to some, faith that you think you have to hold on to for whatever reason, especially, I don't know, maybe familial or something. This is like really an authentic spiritual transit. Neptune down there didn't happen back in 1991. So this kind of really opens up a lot of Pisces to an authentic approach to some very real spiritual awareness, enlightenment, awakening. In India, this is a Lakshmi house to do with wealth, prosperity, goodness, a goddess of the good stuff as well. So you can't dismiss the positivity of this energy where, what kind of abundance that can emerge through this new kind of piercing through the false beliefs in order to establish the true and real.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that, the Lakshmi house. I love that.
Me too. I know. Just love her. I used to have her on my altar. Wow, we did it, girl. We went 2 hours. We didn't even go to the bathroom. We didn't even take a pause. This is great. All right. So 2 women didn't pee for 2 hours. Yay us. So Racheal, where would you, again, in case people made it to the end, reminding them you're going to offer up, and it'll be in the link below when this video goes live, access to Metamorphosis, a class that you're teaching live, but they can watch the replay. You have a great podcast. I was lucky to be on it. I'll put our replay of our podcast below. Anything else you'd like me to direct people to? I'll have your website below. Anything else?
My website's aeolianheart.com. And yeah, right now I'm really excited to share Metamorphosis because it is a creative alchemy workshop. It's 3 days. It's totally free, and it is dedicated to awakening the artist that is within everybody, which is where I'm coming from. All people are born to be artists, but you have to choose to be an artist. And that's what this course is about. It's going to be a beautiful introduction to alchemy as a process that helps artists to unblock, to face that thing that's holding them back, whatever their fear is, time and money issues, moving through the things that prevent us from being creators, and then tapping into that creative flow that comes from the divine. It's a gift for us all, and it's abundant, and it is free flowing, and it is there not just for special people, but for everybody. So yeah, please come to Metamorphosis if you would like to learn creative alchemy, and if you are really feeling the call to tap into your creativity at a deeper level, or maybe even for the first time, you've never had the ability to just call yourself an artist and start that work. Well, then this is
yeah. Boy, that speaks to my soul as well. So that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you took a couple hours out today to spend with my people on my channel, share your beautiful gifts and talents and wisdom with the world. I'm totally enchanted by what you have offered today. It really inspired me from a very deep place. And I'll be filling you in on the details later because I have to go somewhere next. But I'm going to send you a little note to express how grateful I am for today. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, feelings mutual, Lori. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And for everyone, thanks for listening this long. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Okay, I'm going to sign off with us, Racheal, because I have to head out the door to be somewhere, but I will be in touch on the back end.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye all. Take care.